Hi everyone, I'm doing a factual video on Christmas. When I mention the name Jesus, I'm going to use his Hebrew name YAHUWAH, and the Heavenly Father, I'm going to use the name YAHUWAH. Nearly all aspects of Christmas observance have their roots in Roman custom and religion. Consider the following admission from a large American newspaper, the Buffalo News, November 22, 1984. The earliest reference to Christmas being marked on December 25th comes from the 2nd century after Yahushua's birth. It is considered likely the first Christmas celebrations were in reaction to the Roman Saturnalia, a harvest festival that marked the winter solstice, the return of the sun, and honored Saturn, the god of sowing. Saturnalia was a rowdy time, much opposed by the more austere leaders among the still minority Christian sect. Christmas developed, one scholar says, as a means of replacing worship of the sun in the sky with worship of the Son of the Heavenly Father. By 529 AD, after Christianity had become the official state religion of the Roman Empire, Emperor Justinian made Christmas a civic holiday. The celebration of Christmas reached its peak, some would say its worst moments, in the medieval period, when it became a time for conspicuous consumption and unequaled revelry. Consider these quotes from the Catholic Encyclopedia, 1911 edition, under Christmas. Christmas was not among the earliest festivals of the Church. The first evidence of the feast is from Egypt. Further pagan customs centering around the January calends gravitated to Christmas. Under natal day, Origen, an early Catholic writer, admitted, in the scriptures, no one is recorded to have kept a feast or held a great banquet on his birthday. It is only sinners, like Pharaoh and Herod, who make great rejoicings over the day on which they were born into this world. So this is a reference from Origen, the guy called Origen. The Encyclopedia Americana, 1956 edition, adds, Christmas was not observed in the first centuries of the Christian Church, since the Christian usage in general was to celebrate the death of remarkable persons rather than their birth. A feast was established in memory of this event, Christ's birth, in the 4th century. In the 1st century, the Western Church ordered the feast to be celebrated on the day of the Mithraic rites. Mithraic is Mitra, also sun god worship. I'll just read this again. In the 5th century, the Western Church ordered the feast to be celebrated on the day of the Mithraic rites of the birth of the sun in the sky and at the close of the Saturnalia, as no certain knowledge of the day of Messiah's birth existed. There is no mistaking the origin of the modern Christmas celebration. Many additional sources could be cited, and we will return to this later. Let's begin to tie some other facts together. It was 300 years after Messiah before the Roman Church kept Christmas, and not until the 5th century that it was mandated to be kept throughout the empire as an official festival honoring Messiah. Can Messiah be honored by Christmas? That's a question. The answer is, the most common justification that one will hear regarding Christmas is that people have replaced old pagan customs and intents by asserting that they are now focusing on Messiah. I have heard many say that they are honoring Messiah in their Christmas keeping. The problem is that Yahuwah does not say this is acceptable to him. Actually, he plainly commands against it. Keeping Christmas dishonors Messiah. He considers everything about it to be an abomination. Abomination means disgusting. We will soon see why. Messiah said, but in vain they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Matthew 15 verse 9, which is a reference to Isaiah 29 verse 13, I believe. Christmas is not a command of Yahuwah, it is a tradition of men. Messiah continued, full well you reject the commandments of Yahuwah, that you may keep your own tradition. Mark 7 verse 9. Every year throughout the world, on December 25th, hundreds of millions do just that. We will see that Yahuwah plainly commands, follow not the way of the heathen. But most people do not fear Yahuwah, and He allows them to make their own decisions. Human beings are free moral agents, free to obey or disobey Yahuwah Elohim. But woe to those who ignore the plain word of Yahuwah. Was Messiah born on December 25th? Messiah was born in the fall of the year. Many have mistakenly believed He was born around the beginning of the winter, December 25th. They are wrong. Notice the Adam Clark Commentary, Volume 5, page 370. New York edition. It was custom among Jews to send out their sheep to the deserts about the Passover, early spring, and bring them home at the commencement of the first rain. The first rains begin in early to mid-fall. Continuing with this same quote, during the time they were out, the shepherds watched them night and day. As the first rain began early in the month of March, Esvan, which answers to part of our October and November begins sometimes in October. We find that the sheep were kept out in the open country during the whole summer. And as these shepherds had not yet brought home their flocks, it is a presumptive argument that October had not yet commenced, and that consequently our Messiah was not born on the 25th of December, when no flocks were out in the fields. Nor could He have been born later than September, as the flocks were still in the fields by night. On this very ground, the nativity in December should be given up. The feeding of the flocks by night in the fields is a chronological fact. See the quotations from the Talmudists in Lightfoot. Luke 2 verse 8 explains that when Messiah was born and there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flocks by night. Note that they were abiding in the field. This never happened in December. Both Ezra 10 verse 9 to 13 and Songs of Solomon 2 verse 11 show that winter was the rainy season and shepherds could not stay on cold open fields at night. Numerous encyclopedias plainly state that Messiah was not born on December 25th. The Catholic Encyclopedia directly confirms this. In all likelihood, Messiah was born in the fall. A lengthy technical explanation would prove this point. Since we now know that December 25th was nowhere near Messiah's actual birth date, where did the festival associated with this date come from? Now read this quote under Christmas. In the Roman world, the Saturnalia, December 17, was a time of merrymaking and exchanging of gifts. December 25 was also regarded as the birth date of the Iranian mystery god Mithra, the son of righteousness, meaning sun in the sky, not son of man. Because these people worship the sun in the sky. That is who Mithra is. On the Roman New Year, January 1, houses were decorated with greenery and lights, and gifts were given to children and the poor. To these observances were added the German and Celtic Yule rites, when the Teutonic tribes penetrated into Gaul, Britain and Central Europe. Food and good fellowship, the Yule log and Yule cakes, greenery and fir trees. Gifts and greetings all commemorated different aspects of this festive season. Fires and lights, symbols of warmth and lasting life, have always been associated with the winter festival, both pagan and Christian. This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica, 15th edition, volume 2, page 903. A final quote about the selection of December 25th as the birth date of Messiah is necessary. Note an article in the Toronto Star, December 1984, by Alan Edmonds, entitled "We Owe a Lot to the Druids Dutch." The Reformation cast a blight on Christmas. By then, of course, clever ecclesiastical politicians had adopted the pagan midwinter festival as the alleged birth date of Yahuwah, Jesus, of Nazareth, and thrown in a few other pagan goodies to make their takeover more palatable. December 25th was not selected because it was the birth of Messiah, or because it was even near it. It was selected because it coincided with the idolatrous pagan festival Saturnalia. And this celebration must be carefully examined. In any event, we do not know the exact date of Messiah's birth. While YAHUWAH certainly could have made it known, he chose to hide it from the world's eyes. Who was Saturn? Because we're talking about the feast Saturnalia, let's see who is this Saturn. Previous quotes introduced the subject of the Saturnalia. Let's carefully study just exactly who Saturn was. Consider the following quote from another large American newspaper, the Democrat and Chronicle, Rochester, New York, December 1984. The Roman festival of Saturnalia, December 17 to 24, moved citizens to decorate their homes with greens and lights and gifts to children and the poor. The December 25 festival of Natalis Solis Invicti, the birth of the unconquered sun, which is referring to a sun in the sky, was decreed by the Emperor Aurelian in AD 274 as a winter solstice celebration, and sometime later was Christianized as a date to celebrate the birth of the Son of Light, referring to Yahushua Messiah. So we see that they actually just put another name on this festival, which they celebrated long before Christianity started, or Yahushua even appeared on the scene. That it was called Saturnalia, and it started in Egypt. And it is the worship of the sun in the sky. And to make it more, as they say, palatable to the people, to receive this festival of sun god worship, they said suddenly Jesus, Yahushua, was born on this day. So the Christians will also start to celebrate with the pagans. Let's proceed. Dr. William Gutch, chairman of the American Museum of Natural History, Hayden Planetarium, further confirmed the original name of Christmas with this quote on December 1989, in a Westchester, New York newspaper, the Reporter-Dispatch. The early Romans were not celebrating Christmas, but rather a pagan feast called the Saturnalia. It occurred each year around the beginning of winter, on the winter solstice. This was the time when the sun had taken its lowest path across the sky and the days were beginning to lengthen, thus assuring another season of growth. If many of the trappings of the Saturnalia, however, seems to parallel what so many of us do today, we can see where we borrowed our holiday traditions. And indeed, it has been suggested that while Messiah was most likely not born in late December, the early Christians, then still an outlawed sect, moved Christmas to the time of the Saturnalia to draw as little attention as possible to themselves while they celebrated their own holiday. The Saturnalia, of course, celebrated Saturn, the fire god. Saturn was the god of sowing, planting, because heat from the sun was required to allow for planting and growth of crops. He was also worshipped in this dead of winter festival so that he would come back. He was the sun in the sky and warmed the earth again so that spring planting could occur. The planet Saturn was later named after him because, among all of the planets, with its rings and bright red color, it best represented the god of fire. Virtually every civilization has a fire or sun god. The Egyptians and sometimes Romans called him Vulcan. The Greeks named him Kronos, as did the Phoenicians, but they also called him Saturn. The Babylonians called him Tammuz, as Nimrod resurrected in the person of his son. Molech or Baal, as did the Druids. These were all simply various names for Nimrod. Nimrod was considered the father of all Babylonian gods. Notice this horrible practice associated with the worship of the fire god, Nimrod, Saturn, Kronos, Molech and Baal. In the following quote from the Two Babylons, Alexander Hislop, page 231. Now, this is in exact accordance with the character of the great head of the system of fire worship, Nimrod, as the representative of the devouring fire to which human victims, and especially children, were offered in sacrifice.